Peace. How y'all doing? This poet deep. So I wanted to bring a few thoughts that I had on co-parenting. When there's been a failed relationship, whether that was a marriage, I understand some people that have had children or a child might never was even in a relationship, but the necessity of co-parenting, two parents working towards an equal goal, which is to maximize the development of the child. And I understand that looks different for different families because co-parenting has to be defined. What does it mean to maximize our child, with her or his talents, capabilities, education, socialization, all of these different components. It can vary, and some people or some parents are going to be more intricate about the process than others. Not only that, along with co-parenting is understanding the importance of being functional, and that's key is for co-parenting to be able to be something that's very solid that will allow your child to thrive is being functional. What hurts the functionality of co-parenting is when we have unresolved issues with the other parent that usually could be personal. They stem from the relationship and things like that, or they can still stem from things that are going on currently because different parents, some parents, say for instance, they had a child, somewhere in the relationship, it didn't work out, they're no longer together, and they kept it that way. They just didn't. Some parents had a child and they go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And usually, all the back and forth usually do. What I'm saying is getting back together, breaking up, or not supposed to be together, but they're still having sex and things like that, which is understandable, but it creates a lot of confusion most of the time. I can't speak for everybody, but from my experiences, is that it creates more confusion usually. So, functionality, being functional, being able to control your emotions, working on communication, not just how you communicate or how you give communication, but how you receive. How do you listen? How is your understanding? And is this flow, this transmission, something that is understandable on both sides? That's very, very important in the process of co-parenting. I know in my own life, every now and again I've ran into co-parenting, or parents who have a child that's not together. I guess co-parents, yeah. I ran into some co-parents, and every now and again I run into co-parents. They have a very good relationship with each other, almost like a friendship, and it allows them to co-parent so much better versus co-parents who are at war with each other. They have a lot of unresolved issues from the past and things like that. There's a lot of trauma there, and there has not been much work done for healing on either side. And what that does is it clouds the process of putting the best foot forward for the child. Because when you're there to serve the best interests of the child, that has to be a specific focus away from the personal issues with that parent for whatever reason. And I also believe there should be a process that if there are grievances, there are things that need to be talked about. I'm not saying those things should not be talked about, but not in the same conversation with what needs to be done for the child. And it's a great thing if both parents can agree that we do need clarity on our past relationship. We both do need healing, even if we do not end up being together. We don't have hard hearts about what we have done equally, or what one person has done or the other, when we can be able to come to that understanding. And I understand that that's not always typical, and that's not going to always happen. And we're not always going to have a parent that desires to be functional. Being functional can be very difficult, dealing with our inner demons and things like that. And a lot of times with the co-parenting arrangement, if the parents do not have that emotional maturity, that type of war can get thrown into the ordeal with the child. And what that does all the time, in some shape, form, or fashion, it hurts the child. Not necessarily physically, but just the energy that as parents that you hold. If most of your time is spent going back and forth with each other about stuff unrelated to the child, that's time that y'all could be discussing future plans, future goals, solidifying things, but it's been spent on something else. So understand, I'm not saying that those things should not be addressed, but there's a time and a place, and have to be a separate setting, as far as what's personal versus what's best for the child. And I have a different set of advice for people who have a child by someone who has no desire to be functional. I have a different set of advice for people that are in that situation, which I will do another video for, because that requires a certain level of emotional maturity and a certain level of leadership when you have to be a single parent. And I know there's different, some people have other parents, that just go ghost, and usually, typically, not always, but typically it's more so men that go ghost in a situation. Not saying that's always the case, because I know that's not true. And then you have some, parents, they here and there, but they're not solid. They're not a solid force. But if we can have a solid force, that's definitely always going to be preferred, because if two parents have a child and they can't be there together for that child to be able to see a union, that's already not a good thing. But the next best thing to that situation is for both parents to have unison in raising that child, that still can give the child a lot of great life lessons, and a covering of love that will help them as they go through life, and that they understand that things are not over just because my parents' relationship is over. I think that's very, very, very important, and I think that's very key. And I think we should utilize resources that we have available. If you have a village, wonderful. Use your village for the healing, for the processes that need to be in place, whether that's mediation between you and your other parent, or the other, not your other parent, the other parent. You have parenting classes where you can develop parenting plans and things like that. These are things that we should be working on as far as goals, and they don't have to be goals where we're trying to plan out 5 years in advance and things like that. We could just be trying to plan 3 months at a time as to what will be our main focuses and things like that. So, those are just a few things that I wanted to share. I hope that if you cannot be in a relationship at this time or ever with the other parent, we can come to a point to see that the children still need to be raised, reared with love and direction, and that you give the child the best opportunity when you're doing it together. Peace.